Hello, fabulous scholars. Today we are going to finish the scholar's tale about Griselda, who was a serf who married the Lord Walter, but she had to promise to never argue or disagree with him. And so far she's kept that promise, even when a servant said, "Oh, Lord Walter said that your daughter has to go away," or "Lord Walter said your son has to go away." She didn't complain. She didn't say anything. She let it happen. And now Lord Walter's like, well, but she's still living a pretty good life compared to when she was a serf. So what if? And that's where we left off. So let's see what happens if she complains or not. The idea stayed with Walter, played on him, preyed on him for week after month after year. And in the end, the temptation was too strong. He announced that he was divorcing his wife. "I'm sorry, Griselda, but the people in my villages and on my farms just can't stand the sight of you anymore. It just cannot go on." Griselda, her hands linked in front of her, her face a little pale, her calm eyes expressing nothing, bowed her head and said, "No, of course, Walter. You must marry again, someone well born. I am very sorry to have upset your people." "Well, I can't have two wives, can I?" Walter blustered. "You had better go back to your father. Oh, and give back everything I've given you since our wedding day." "I can give you back my wedding ring and my jewels, sir," said Griselda quietly, "and I will leave all the fine dresses in the chests upstairs. But your ladies in waiting burned my old dress. Could I please wear just the one I'm wearing now?" Walter turned his back to grin and congratulate himself on choosing such a matchless wife. There was a thrill in the pit of his stomach like the one he felt when an arrow pierced a deer he was hunting. "How far can I go?" he wondered. And he said, "No, my new wife might want to wear the dress you have on." So Griselda unlaced the sleeves of the velvet dress and let it fall at her feet. "You may keep the underskirts," said Walter. As Griselda turned to begin her long barefoot journey home, he called her back. "Oh, Griselda!" "Yes, husband of mine?" "Well, I'll need someone to organize the wedding, and you know how to handle the servants better than anyone. You don't mind helping out, do you?" There were angry murmurings from the peasants and farmers as Griselda walked home to her father's shamble-down hut. "I heard they say that Lord Walter murdered his baby daughter," said one milkmaid to another. "And his little boy, too." So here's Griselda walking home, and the people talking about her and Walter. "You can see what he thinks of us poor folk," said a young farrier, that's someone who puts shoes on horses. "Not good enough for his fine company. Oh, he'll marry a princess next time. You just wait and see." But soon they all grew excited by the preparations for the wedding, and they forgot the way that Walter had treated Griselda. She hid her shabby misery in her father's hut, and because she never complained, because she smiled as much as ever, they all foolishly supposed that she was happy. Is she? No. "Oh, a feast for 300 people," said the cooks to the tradesmen at the back door of the manor house. "Jewels fit for a queen. He sent to Padua for silk and Brittany for the finest lace. He sent to Brescia for the bride. She's only 15. On the day of the wedding, no one was busier than Griselda. She added the final seasonings to the sauces. She sprinkled flower petals in the finger bowls of water. She polished the cups that the bride and groom would drink from. And then she greeted the guests at the door and was so charming and gracious, they wondered where a raggedy scullery maid had learned such manners. Winding through the vineyards and meadows came the lavish parade of Walter fetching home his bride-to-be. Her young brother, a boy of about 10, rode on a dappled, spotted pony. He wore a scarlet suit, and his curled hair sprang to his shoulders. The bride herself rode in a white-covered carriage hung with curtains, while her ladies-in-waiting rode side-saddle, sadly watching their hems sweep in the dust and the mud. What do you think of my new bride-to-be, Griselda? Called Walter as he rode past her in the gateway. She's very fair. My heart jumps strangely at the sight of her. Do you wish me joy, Griselda? He asked. As much as always, my lord. Walter had to turn his back to conceal his pride and joy. Oh, she is such an exceptional wife, he thought crowingly. A wife in a million. But he said, You give us your blessing then, my one-time wife? Of course, my lord. Who am I that you seek such a blessing? But I would like to say one thing. I do not believe your new wife's upbringing was the same as mine. She's delicate and sensitive, not used to hardship and suffering. She might find your tests harder to bear than I did. I do most humbly beg you, please be kind to this wife. Only then did Walter call an end to his long joke. Oh, Griselda, wife of mine, go dress yourself in your finest clothes and sit with me at the head of our table where a wife ought to sit. All of this was just a test to see if you would keep your promise and agree with everything I said. This new bride of mine, I could marry her if I wanted to. She's our daughter, and her brother is our son. The children stared at their mother, a stranger to them in her gray-haired middle age, and their mother stared back at them until she fell down in a dead faint. She came round in Walter's arms. I sent them to Brescia, he was saying, and I had them educated by the best tutors in Italy. They have wanted for nothing. Get up, my dear wife. I never had any intention of replacing you. You didn't? No. What kind of husband do you take me for? Why, a man never had a better wife. And the feast to celebrate their reuniting of Griselda and Walter as man and wife, mother and father, was grander than any wedding feast. Everyone was invited, even Griselda's old father, who never went home again to his rain-leaky cottage on the borders of the estate. Of course, it would never happen that way nowadays, said the Oxford scholar wistfully. Women aren't what they used to be. He was just then knocked from his saddle. The widow in the hat had given him such a hearty shove that he had landed in the cart rut like a duck in a pond. I should think not, she bellowed at him as he struggled dazed to his feet. I should just think women aren't the same nowadays. They've got more sense and more spirit. Never had a better wife. Oh, no woman ever had a worse husband by the sounds of it. The poor lamb. What am I saying, the poor lamb? Griselda was a disgrace. She should have known how to put her husband in his place, and a husband's place is always in the wrong. And what about those poor little children? They grew up without a mother's love and tenderness, all on their own in some foreign city. Harry Bailey held up his hand. It was only a story, lady, he exclaimed, trying to pacify the widow, whose hat was shaking from stem to stern. None of it really happened. I should hope not, said the widow, calming down. I have no patience with a woman like that. A wife's got a duty to her husband. I did my duty to my 5 husbands. I nagged them when they needed to be nagged, which was 8 days a week, and I licked them into shape as best I could. And if any of them had lived long enough, the poor souls, they would have thanked me for it. I'm sure our friend the scholar would agree with every word of that, said Harry, trying to keep the peace. But the scholar had opened his book again and was already engrossed in mathematical astronomy. You're clearly a woman after my own heart, called the monk, cantering up to the widow's side. I'm after nobody's heart, you rascal. I've won the hearts of 5 husbands, and that's enough to weary any woman. Now I'm free to think and say what I like, thank goodness. She eased her heavy rug around her hips, and her legs poked forward in the stirrups. She was wearing red woolen stockings and soft leather shoes. I suspect she was richer than all of us put together. So there's the widow in her fancy clothes. We will finish or continue reading another story tomorrow, scholars. Bye.